So, after lots of back and forth, it is now the gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Meuser, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Paley, do you think the $6 billion and Ms. Rosenberg will be only used for humanitarian purposes? You pretty much stated that, right? Even though the Iranian President Raisi said they will use it for whatever they want, whenever we need it. Do you not believe, is the Iranian president not to be trusted in his words?
I would certainly not believe everything that the Iranian president says.
Okay, so the Iranian president should not be believed in this case, or do you just pick and choose when you believe him and don't believe him?
We don't trust the Iranians. We view them as an adversary and
Okay, so why do you think then that the aid would not be used for other purposes? Do you understand what the term fungible means? You probably do. You're pretty educated, right? You know what fungible means? Okay, so if Iran has $50 million and they get $50 million and they were going to use that $50 million for food, and then they get a new $50 million, they can use the new $50 million for food and use the old $50 million to buy weapons for terrorists. You get that, right? Sir? So why don't you think that's going to happen if you don't trust them?
Thanks very much for the question. So I have full confidence in the due diligence measures that Assistant Secretary Rosenberg has outlined for this money. It can only be used for
You know, there's an expression up by me, you know, there's a bridge in Brooklyn that I'd like to show you and see if you're interested in. That's just absurd, and I think you know it. And in your memoirs, you'll probably write it that way. What about the $10 billion from Iraq? That's not fungible either. That will be highly monitored, and we'll watch where every penny goes.
So in terms of the due diligence, both of these sets of funds can only be used for humanitarian transactions, sure. And we have a great deal
in theory, in weak theory, against a regime that we don't trust, that we know is bombing Americans' forces and as we speak. $6 billion, you say, no, we love saying not one penny, not one penny, not one penny. Okay, is that permanent? Is that permanent, that not one penny of that $6 billion will go to Iran?
As we've said, we do not expect this money to go anywhere anytime.
Okay, so, but can you guarantee me it's not permanent? It is permanent?
What we've said, and this is based on U.S. law.
So it's not. So really we should have said yet, not one penny yet has gone to the Iranian terrorist regime. That's more of a correct statement. Are the sanctions in Iran, we're stating that the sanctions in Iran now are stronger than during the previous administration, even though Iran's reserves went from $4 billion to God knows where, $80 billion. Even though that is a fact, you're going to sit there and tell me that, tell the world, that the sanctions today are stronger than they were under the previous administration, even though there's been a reversal of fortune.
So this administration, we have not lifted any sanctions against Iran, and in fact, we have actually rolled out countless numbers of sanctions.
Is it true that the amount of oil exported from Iran is nearly 10 times what it was 4 years ago?
We continue to closely monitor oil exports.
I'm asking you a question. Is it true or false? Is it true that the amount of oil being exported from Iran is nearly 10 times more than it was 4 years ago?
The oil
even though you didn't change the sanctions.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that true?
Mr. Congressman, the oil exports from Iran have fluctuated over time. There are a variety of reasons for that, but what does remain in place is all of our sanctions, which we continue to enforce.
But the sanctions aren't working, clearly. In fact, they're 1/10 what they were before in enforcement. The International Atomic Energy Agency found many violations, okay, I was there, of the uranium enrichment taking place in Iran. Many violations. Can Iran be trusted to abide by those so-called rules that are trying to be worked out with the Biden administration with no surprise inspections in place?
Thanks for the question. So the Biden administration has been clear that we will never let Iran get a nuclear weapon. One of the things that we have done is continue to encourage our partners and allies to press Iran to cooperate more fully with the IAEA. We engage regularly with the IAEA, and this is one of our top priorities.
I hope so. Do you agree that Iran is the primary supporter of terrorism and supporting, the number one supporter of Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and behind the nearly 100 attacks on American forces in the last 2 months?
We have minced no words about our concerns about Iran's support for terrorist groups.
Okay, thank you. I yield back.